The silence of Titan was a pressure all its own, a crushing weight of cold and quiet that seeped through the triple-pane polymer of the viewport and into the very marrow of a man's bones. Doctor. Eris Thorne had come to welcome it, to prefer its sterile emptiness to the cacophony of judgment and pity that had hounded him from the inner worlds. Here, at the bottom of the solar system, suspended in a tin can he called Triton's Folly, his past was just a ghost in the comms delay, too faint to haunt him properly. His world was the Kraken Mare, a sea not of water, but of liquid methane and ethane, a sable mirror reflecting a sky dominated by the magnificent, terrifying rings of Saturn. For 6 years he had watched this alien ocean, his only companions the hum of the recycler and the ghosts of his own making. He was a xenobiologist in a place officially deemed lifeless, a watcher at a post no one else wanted, a punishment he had chosen for himself. His disgrace had been loud, a public spectacle that had shattered his career after the Europa incident, where his theories about cryovolcanic ecosystems had led a team of 4, his friends, to their deaths beneath the ice. The official report cited his reckless theoretical leaps and unsubstantiated conviction. They called him a zealot, a gambler who had staked lives on a phantom and lost. So they sent him here, to the Folly, to monitor seismic activity, a glorified janitorial post for a mind that had once been celebrated. But Eris hadn't stopped searching. He had rerouted the station's deep penetrating sonar, piggybacked his own biosignature sensors onto the geological arrays, and spent thousands of hours staring at the deep, murky scans of the Mare's abyss. He was chasing another phantom, another unsubstantiated conviction, because in the crushing depths, nearly 400 meters down where the pressure was immense and the light non-existent, something was moving. The official channels dismissed his reports as sensor ghosts, tectonic shifts, methane clathrate collapses, but Eris knew the difference. Tectonic plates didn't move with a rhythm that mimicked a slow, deep breath. Gas blowouts didn't produce sonar returns that suggested a mass larger than any terrestrial mountain range. Something was down there, sleeping a slumber as old as the moon itself. And Eris was the only one willing to watch. The awakening came not as a tremor, but as a scream made of pure thought. Eris was calibrating a drone for a shallow-depth survey, his fingers tracing patterns on a holographic interface, when the universe inside his head tilted on its axis. It was a wave of raw, unfiltered emotion, a psychic tsunami that washed over him without sound or warning. It wasn't hostile, not intentionally. It was something far more unnerving, the desolate, soul-shattering loneliness of a being that had been utterly alone for millennia, suddenly stirring and finding another mind nearby. The feeling was a spectrum of cosmic horror, the confusion of a god waking in a closet, the bewilderment of an intelligence so vast it perceived his entire existence as a flicker of static. The station's lights blew out in a shower of sparks. The primary generator whined and died, and every screen went black. A single, piercing alarm blared from the emergency battery system as Eris was thrown from his chair, clutching his temples as the psychic echo faded, leaving behind the scent of ozone and the phantom ache of an aeon's worth of solitude. He lay on the cold deck plating, gasping, the after-image of a billion dying stars seared behind his eyelids. It took him a full 10 minutes to reboot the station's core systems, his hands shaking so violently he could barely tap the commands into the emergency console. The energy surge had originated from the very coordinates he had been monitoring for years, a bioelectrical discharge so massive it defied all known biological models, a pulse of life from the heart of the Dead Sea. The silence he had cherished was broken forever. He was no longer alone. That kind of energy spike, however, did not go unnoticed. 2 days later, a new star appeared in Titan's sky, a brilliant, hard point of light that resolved itself into the sleek, weaponized form of the Solar Defense Corps patrol vessel, the Vigilance. Its arrival was an invasion, a violation of his exile. The voice that crackled over his newly repaired comm system was as cold and sharp as a shard of frozen nitrogen. Triton's folly. This is Commander Iva Rostova of the SDC vessel Vigilance. We are in a mandated security orbit. Explain the nature of the energy discharge from your sector 2 days ago. Our readings are anomalous. Eris, still nursing a migraine that felt like a drill bit in his skull, looked at the warship hanging in his sky and felt a familiar dread. Rostova. He knew the name. She was a rising star in the SDC, a pragmatist known for following protocols to the letter and for a deep-seated distrust of the scientific community, which she viewed as a collection of reckless dreamers. To her, an anomaly wasn't a wonder. It was a threat to be cataloged and, if necessary, neutralized. Commander, Eris began, his voice hoarse. What you detected was not geological. It was biological. Something is alive down there. Something immense. The pause on the other end was heavy with skepticism. Dr. Thorne, she finally replied, her tone dripping with condescension. I have your file. It mentions a penchant for unsubstantiated conviction. The official assessment is a magnetospheric reaction to a coronal mass ejection. You are to stand down and allow my team to conduct a full diagnostic of your station systems. We suspect a malfunction. The sheer, infuriating ignorance of it stoked a fire in Eris's gut. He had felt that thing's mind, its ancient sorrow. With all due respect, Commander, he shot back. Your long-range scans can't tell the difference between a solar flare and the awakening of a living creature. My sensors are right on top of it. Let me show you. Ignoring Rostova's curt refusal, Eris initiated the launch sequence for Drone 7, his most advanced deep-sea submersible, a machine he'd modified himself with hardened shielding and a suite of his own biotelemetry sensors. Doctor, I am ordering you to cease any unauthorized activity, Rostova's voice warned, now edged with steel. Your actions could be perceived as obstructing an SDC operation. But Eris was already gone, his mind connected to the drone as it detached from the station and plunged into the frigid, black liquid of the Kraken mare. The descent was a familiar ritual, the pressure gauge ticking higher, the world outside the drone's camera narrowing to a cone of light cutting through the swirling methane snow. 200 meters. 300. He was pushing the drone past its certified crush depth, alarms pinging softly in his ears. He ignored them. The sonar returns were no longer a vague mountain range. They were a definitive, colossal shape, a living continent shifting in the abyss. Then, through the camera feed, he saw it. It wasn't a machine, not a structure. It was flesh, if that word could even apply. A landscape of scaled, gray-black hide that absorbed the drone's light, marked with canyons of ancient scars, bioluminescent patterns, intricate as a galaxy, pulsed across its surface in waves of soft blue and violet light. As the drone drifted over a ridge, a valley opened up below, and in the center of that valley, an eye the size of a sports stadium, slowly opened. It was not an eye of this solar system. The pupil was a swirling vortex of silver, and as it focused on the tiny drone, Eris felt a tremor of recognition in his own mind, a flicker of curiosity from the abyssal god. "Rostova, are you seeing this?" He whispered into his comm, his voice trembling with a mixture of terror and vindication. "Look, just look." On the bridge of the Vigilance, Commander Rostova stared at the feed Eris had patched through to her main screen. The image was grainy, distorted by the extreme conditions, but it was undeniable. The officers around her were silent, their professional composure cracking in the face of the impossible, but Rostova's face remained a mask of stone. "It could be a unique geological formation," she stated, her voice flat, refusing to yield. "Bioluminescent extremophiles on a large rock. We're launching a deep penetrating neutrino scan. It will give us a clear density map and confirm its composition." A neutrino scan. Eris felt a surge of panic. A high-energy particle beam like that, fired directly into it. It would be like stabbing it with a billion microscopic needles. At best, it would be painful, an act of aggression. At worst, it could provoke a reaction, a lashing out from a creature that could boil the methane sea with a single thought. "Rostova, you don't understand what you're dealing with," he pleaded. "It's aware. It's intelligent. That energy discharge was it waking up. You can't just shoot at it." "I am taking necessary precautions, Doctor," she retorted, her decision made. "Your phantom is an unknown variable, and my mission is to eliminate variables." In that moment, Eris knew he couldn't reason with her. She operated on a different frequency, one of rules and threats, not of wonder and communication. Defying her again, he raced to the station's main comms array. He wasn't a soldier. He was a scientist. His instinct wasn't to fight, but to understand. He rerouted the entire station's power to the transmitter, not to broadcast, but to listen. He remembered the specific psychic frequency of the contact, the unique signature of that ancient, lonely mind, and he tuned the array to it, turning his entire station into a giant receiver for a language that wasn't spoken. He opened the channel, offering nothing but his own focused consciousness, a silent greeting sent into the deep. The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. The Keto's mind slammed into his, not with raw emotion this time, but with intent. It showed him things and pouring memories that were not his own directly into his soul. He saw a sky burning with unfamiliar stars, a fleet of crystalline ships shattering into dust. He saw a swarm, a chittering, metallic tide of insectoid creatures, their forms a nightmare of claws and mandibles, flowing over planets and stripping them bare, a locust plague on a cosmic scale. He saw the Keto, and others like it, standing against them, not as ships, but as living worlds, their psychic screams the only weapons that could turn back the tide. He saw a desperate escape, a long, lonely journey through the void, and a final, exhausted slumber in the cold, quiet cradle of a distant moon. It wasn't a monster. It was a weapon, a refugee, a sentinel, and its awakening had been a beacon. As this terrifying, epic history flooded his mind, an alarm shrieked from a secondary monitor, one tied to the Vigilance public tactical feed. Eris tore his mind away from the vision, his body shaking, and looked at the screen. In the far reaches of the system, just beyond the Oort cloud, Rostova's long-range sensors had lit up like a festival. Dozens of FTL signatures had just dropped out of hyperspace. They were small, fast, and non-human, and they were all burning toward Saturn. The chittering horde had heard the dinner bell rung by the Keto's awakening. Eris grabbed his comm, his voice a raw, terrified scream that echoed through the bridge of the Vigilance. "Rostova, they're coming." It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. It was trying to warn us. In the abyss of the Kraken mare, the drone's camera was filled with the image of the great silver eye, which now seemed to be staring not at the drone, but through it, through Eris, and out into the cold dark of space, watching the approach of an ancient, hungry enemy. On her bridge, Commander Rostova stared at her tactical display, at the swarm of hostile contacts accelerating towards her, her mind finally, violently, forced to accept that the universe was infinitely larger and more terrifying than her rulebook had ever conceived. The Bridge of the Vigilance was a cathedral of controlled panic. Alarms whooped in a disciplined, rhythmic cadence as Commander Rostova's officers moved with the strained efficiency of a well-oiled machine on the verge of shearing its own gears. Status report. Rostova's voice cut through the noise. A razor in the storm. Her tactical officer, a young lieutenant named Kenji, pointed a trembling finger at the holographic tank dominating the center of the room. Hostiles confirmed. Commander, 74 contacts. Designate Swarm Alpha. No known drive signatures. High energy readings consistent with particle weaponry. They're ignoring us. Rostova's eyes narrowed. He was right. The cloud of hostile icons, rendered in stark, angry red, was not plotting an attack vector on her ship, the most advanced military vessel in the system. They were burning straight for Titan, their trajectory a perfect, unwavering line aimed directly at the coordinates of Eris Thorne's Phantom. The comm channel crackled, and Eris's voice, raw with a terror she was beginning to understand, filled the bridge. Rostova, you have to listen. They aren't here for Titan. They're here for it. The Keto, it's a name, a designation. It's the last of its kind. A sentinel. They've been hunting it for eons. Rostova silenced him with a flick of a switch. Her mind, trained to process threats in a linear, logical fashion, assembled the pieces into a terrifyingly simple equation. The creature awoke. The creature sent a signal. The signal attracted a hostile fleet. The creature was the problem. Lieutenant, target the source of the anomaly in the Kraken mare. Arm all forward kinetic batteries. I want a full salvo of deep penetrating tungsten rods. If we can shatter that thing's shell, whatever it is, we might disrupt the signal drawing them in. Kenji stared at her, his face pale. Commander, target the life form. Target the variable, Lieutenant, she snapped, her voice leaving no room for debate. That is an order. Down in Triton's Folly, Eris saw the targeting solutions light up on his tactical feed. The Vigilance was preparing to fire directly into the heart of the Keto. It was like trying to kill a volcano with a handgun. A profound, bone-deep certainty settled in his soul. If Rostova fired, she wouldn't just fail to kill the Keto. She would sign the death warrant for everyone in this system. The Keto, still linked to his mind, felt the hostile intent like a physical blow. A wave of ancient, weary anger washed through Eris, a feeling so potent it made him want to vomit. It wasn't malice, but the righteous fury of a guardian being threatened by the very children it was meant to protect. Don't do it, Rostova. You'll doom us all, he screamed into the comm, But he knew she wasn't listening. He had to do something more. Closing his eyes, he pushed his consciousness back into the channel, back into the mind of the abyssal god. They don't understand, he projected. A thought not of words, but of pure, desperate meaning. They are afraid. Show them. Show them you are not the enemy. He felt the Keto's immense focus shift. It had been watching the approaching swarm, a predator watching predators. Now, a fraction of its cosmic attention turned inward toward the metal gnat in the sky preparing to sting it. On the Bridge of the Vigilance, Kenji's voice was tight with stress. Targeting solution locked. Batteries are hot. On your command, Commander. Rostova's hand was raised, ready to fall. Fire on my... She was cut off as every screen on her bridge flickered and changed. The tactical display, the engine status, the life support readouts, all were replaced by a single, impossible image, the view from Eris's Drone 7 staring into the swirling silver vortex of the Keto's eye. Then, through the ship's speakers, a voice spoke. It was Eris's voice. Yet it was not. It was deeper, layered with 1,000 other echoes, resonating with a power that vibrated in the deck plates. The enemy is not in the deep. It is in the dark. The psychic broadcast shattered Rostova's composure. She stumbled back, a hand to her temple, as the sheer alienness of the contact scraped against the inside of her skull. The bridge crew cried out, clutching their heads. It was a violation, a telepathic intrusion that bypassed all her firewalls and all her training. Before she could recover and give the order, the swarm entered Titan's upper atmosphere. They moved like no ships she had ever seen, not with elegant burns and orbital mechanics, but like a cloud of sharpened metal insects, their movements asymmetrical, chaotic, yet terrifyingly purposeful. They were biometallic, part machine, part chitinous nightmare, and they plunged directly into the thick, orange haze of the atmosphere, heedless of the friction and heat. Their goal was clear. They were diving for the Kraken mare. Commander Kenji yelled, his professionalism overriding the psychic shock. The swarm has breached the atmosphere. Impact with the mare in 90 seconds. Rostova's mind was reeling, caught between two impossible threats. Her protocol demanded she engage the hostiles, but her gut, now screaming with a primal fear she had never known, told her that the voice from the deep was right. She had been aiming at the wrong monster. Yet, the order had been given. The automated firing sequence, initiated by her command, could only be stopped by her. Her pride, her career, her entire worldview was at stake. With a curse that was half prayer, she slammed her hand down on the abort panel. Belay that order, all batteries. Stand down, helm, bring us about. Target the swarm. Launch all drone fighters, fire at will. The crew, shaken but relieved, sprang into action. The tension on the bridge transforming from confused horror into the focused energy of combat. The vigilance pivoted in the void, its sleek form turning to face the descending horde. But they were too slow. The first wave of swarmlings, smaller, faster scout craft, hit the surface of the Kraken mare. There was no splash. The super-chilled liquid methane simply vaporized around their superheated entry points, creating vast, hissing clouds of gas. They dove, their forms like horrific metal squids, firing lances of corrosive energy into the deep, probing for their ancient prey. Eris, still bound to the Keto, felt the impacts as dull, throbbing pains in his own body. He felt the Keto's anger spike, its weariness burned away by the fires of immediate combat. The time for slumber was over. It had to fight, but it was weak, its energy reserves depleted after millennia of hibernation. It needed a conduit, a focus point, a nervous system to interface with the strange new physics of this era. It needed him. Lend me your eyes. The Keto's thought echoed in his soul, not as a request, but as a statement of necessity. Lend me your mind. Oris didn't have time to refuse. The link between them deepened, no longer a conversation, but a complete fusion. He felt the crushing pressure of the mare not on his station, but on his own skin. He saw not through his eyes or the drone's camera, but through 1,000 senses he had no name for, perceiving the electric fields of the swarmlings, the gravitational stresses of Saturn's rings, the frantic heartbeat of Eva Rostova miles above him. The process was a crucible of psychic fire, burning away the man he was and forging something new. He screamed, not in his throat, but in his mind, a soundless peal of agony and ecstasy as his consciousness expanded to fill the frame of a living god. As the main swarm fleet descended, preparing to deliver the killing blow, the surface of the Kraken mare began to boil, not just from the heat of the ships, but from a deeper, internal energy. A column of light, a brilliant, piercing blue-white, erupted from the depths where the Keto lay. It was not a laser or a plasma beam. It was a spear of pure thought, a wave of cohesive psychic force given physical form, and it moved faster than light. It struck the nearest swarmling scout, and the biometallic ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, its atoms unwritten from the laws of physics. Another spear of light lanced out, then another, a flurry of psychic artillery fire erupting from the methane sea. On the bridge of the Vigilance, the tactical display became a mess of dying red icons. Rostova watched, breathless, as a dozen swarm ships were erased from reality in under 5 seconds. The remaining scout ships scattered, their chaotic flight patterns turning from aggression to blind panic. The Keto was fighting back, and its weapons were things of nightmare and legend. When the effort was costly, Eris felt the strain, a vast, siphoning exhaustion. The Keto was powerful, but it was also a starving giant. Each shot was taking a terrible toll on its reserves, and on him. A wave of blackness washed at the edges of his new, expanded consciousness. He was the fuse, and the bomb he was channeling was burning him out. Above, Rostova saw the lull in the Keto's attack and the main swarm fleet regrouping. Adapting, they were forming a screen, using their smaller ships as shields while their larger vessels began to power some kind of massive area of effect weapon. They had learned from their mistake. They wouldn't attack the Keto directly. They would boil the entire sea. "They're going to sterilize the moon," Kenji whispered in horror. Rostova looked from the reorganizing enemy fleet to the now quiet sea below. The choice had been taken from her. Protocol was dead. The rulebook was ashes. There was only the enemy, and the enemy of her enemy. "Get me a channel to Triton's Folly," she commanded, her voice steady now, forged in the fire of this new reality. "Get me Dr. Thorn." In the crushing dark, Eris Thorn, or what was left of him, heard her call. He was exhausted, burned, but he was also more than he had ever been. He was the voice of the deep, the mind of the Sentinel. The war for the solar system had begun, and its first, most unlikely soldier was a disgraced scientist at the bottom of a methane sea. The comm channel hissed to life on the bridge of the Vigilance, and the voice that answered Rostova's call was a terrifying chorus. It was Eris Thorn's voice at its core, but it was stretched thin, wrapped around a deeper, impossibly ancient resonance that made the fillings in the crew's teeth ache. "We hear you, Commander of the Metal Shell." Rostova stood firm, her hands gripping the command console to steady herself against the psychic pressure. "Dr. Thorn, or whatever you are, the swarm is preparing to destroy this moon. My ship's weapons are having minimal effect. You possess weapons that can neutralize them. I am proposing a coordinated attack." There was a pause filled with the sound of static and what might have been the distant collapse of a star. Eris's human consciousness seemed to fight its way to the surface of the psychic ocean. "Rostova, it's me. I'm inside. It's listening through me. The Keto, it agrees. But it's weak. Those shots you saw, they drain nearly everything it had stored over the last 1,000 years. It can't fire again." Rostova's heart sank. then we are out of options. No. The deeper voice boomed, overriding Eris's. The shell possesses a heart of fusion, a small, angry star. It is a poor substitute for the celestial bodies of our youth, but it will suffice. We require your power. Kenji looked up from his console, his face a mask of disbelief. Commander, they're asking for a direct power feed from our reactor. It's not possible. The energy transfer would require a conduit we don't have. And even if we did, shunting that much power would leave us with minimal shields and life support. We'd be a sitting duck. Eris's voice returned, strained and gasping. Triton's folly. The station. The comms array I used. It can be modified. I can turn it into a receiver, a focusing lens. You can beam the energy here. The Keto will draw it from the station. Through me. It will hurt, but it's the only way. The sheer insanity of the plan was staggering. To voluntarily drain their own ship's power core and channel it into an alien Leviathan through a disgraced scientist, all while a hostile fleet was preparing to glass the moon they were orbiting. It was a maneuver that would get any commander court-martialed and thrown in a psychiatric ward. But Rostova looked at the tactical display, at the swarm's larger vessels moving into a terrifyingly precise formation. A sickly green energy field began to coalesce between them, a lens of pure malice forming in the void. They were no longer just preparing a weapon, they were aiming it. The rulebook was not just ashes, its memory was an unaffordable luxury. Kenji, she said, her voice a cold, hard diamond. Work with Dr. Thorne. Give him whatever technical data he needs to modify that station's array. Chief Engineer, prepare for a full power shunt from the main reactor to the primary communications laser. Reroute all non-essential power. And I mean all of it. I want the lights to flicker when you do it. The chief engineer, a woman whose face was permanently etched with the stress of keeping a star contained in a magnetic bottle, nodded grimly. Aye, Commander. It'll be like threading a needle in a hurricane with the ship's pants on fire, but we'll do it. Down in the folly, Eris worked with a speed and clarity that was not his own. The Keto's mind, ancient and wise in the ways of energy and physics, flowed through him, guiding his hands. He tore open panels, rerouted conduits, and jury-rigged the station's comms dish with salvaged parts from the life support system and a deep-core geological drill. He was no longer just a biologist, he was a master engineer, a particle physicist, a living extension of a will that had seen galaxies born and die. The process was agonizing. The psychic link was a torrent, and his human brain was the fragile dam holding it back. Blood began to drip from his nose, and a spider web of broken capillaries bloomed beneath his left eye. He could feel the Keto's impatience, its hunger for the energy it needed to defend its new, accidental home. Above, the vigilance repositioned itself, its belly facing the folly. A brilliant, focused point of light appearing on its communications assembly as the laser was charged with the raw, furious power of the ship's fusion core. They are a hive. The Keto's voice explained inside Eris's mind, a lesson in cosmic biology given under extreme duress. Eris relayed the information to Rostova, his own voice slurring with exhaustion. The swarm. It's a hive mind. The smaller ships, the drones, they're just appendages. The larger vessels are synaptic nodes, but they are all controlled by one central intelligence. A queen! Kenji's console chirped as he cross-referenced the swarm's formation with the new data. He's right. There's one ship, larger than the others, positioned at the geometric center of their weapon array. It's not contributing energy to the lens. It appears to be directing it. The queen ship. Rostova saw the path forward. A sliver of impossible hope. Can you destroy it? She asked Eris Veportes. There was a long pause. The Keto can, Eris finally said. But not from here. The queen is shielded by the other ships. The psychic lance is a line-of-sight weapon. To kill the head, you must first bypass the teeth. A plan formed, born of desperation and alien strategy. It was a symphony of mutual suicide. The Keto would not use the energy from the Vigilance to fire its lances. That was too slow, too inefficient. Instead, it would do something else. Something it had not done since the great wars of its forgotten era. It would project a psychic corridor, a tunnel through reality itself, shielded from the swarm's attacks. The corridor would be just wide enough for Rostova's ship. She would have to fly the Vigilance directly through the heart of the swarm fleet. A high-speed, point-blank attack run aimed at the Queen. Her ship would be the bullet, and the Keto would be the barrel of the gun. That is the most insane plan I have ever heard, Kenji stated, his voice flat with shock. Rostova looked at the charging energy lens of the swarm, which now glowed with the intensity of a dying sun. It is also the only plan we have, she replied. Helm, plot a direct course for that queen ship. Weapons, divert all remaining power to the forward magnetic accelerator cannon. We will get one shot. Make it count. She opened a ship-wide channel. All hands. This is the commander. We are about to execute a high-risk offensive maneuver. Bracing for impact. The moment came. Eris. Now Rostova commanded. In the folly. Eris jammed the final conduit into place and screamed as the power hit him. A brilliant, sapphire blue beam of energy shot from the Vigilance and struck the modified comms dish of Triton's Folly. The station lit up like a star, and the energy funneled directly into Eris. His body convulsed, lifted from the floor as arcs of raw power danced across his skin. He was a human lightning rod, channeling the heart of a warship into the mind of a god. The Keto drank the energy, and the entire Kraken mare began to glow, the light shining up through the hundreds of meters of liquid methane, a vast, intricate pattern like a circuit board the size of a continent, illuminated its ancient hide. Then, from the Keto, a new projection erupted. It was not a lance of light, but a shimmering, translucent tunnel that materialized in the void of space. It looked like a heat haze, a distortion in reality that cut a perfect trade line from the Vigilance's current position directly to the Swarm Queen. The corridor is open, Commander Kenji yelled. It's holding. Rostova gripped her command chair, her knuckles white. Helm, full thrust. Take us in. The Vigilance surged forward. A silver dart fired into the heart of hell. As it entered the shimmering tunnel, the universe outside the viewports became a maelstrom of chaos. Swarm drones slammed into the psychic shield and were annihilated, their energy weapons splashing against it like harmless rain. The noise was deafening, a constant shriek of tortured space-time and dying enemy ships. They were flying through a hurricane of pure psychic will. Down below, Eris Thorn was burning from the inside out, his mind screaming, his body failing, but he held the channel open. His last ounce of human will focused on a single task, protecting the metal shell, the bullet that carried humanity's last hope. He was the zealot, the gambler, making one final reckless bet, staking not just lives, but the fate of the entire solar system. The journey through the Keto psychic corridor was an eternity compressed into seconds. The vigilance screamed through the void, a sliver of defiance slicing through the heart of the swarm. Outside the shimmering tunnel, the universe was a kaleidoscope of violence explosions, of swarm drones that impacted the invisible shield. Streams of plasma fire deflected into the cold dark, and the frantic, chittering chaos of an enemy hive suddenly finding itself outmaneuvered. Inside the cockpit, the ship groaned under the impossible stresses. Alarms blared, red lights strobed across the consoles, and the deck plating vibrated with a terrifying intensity. Kenji, clinging to his console, yelled over the din. Shield integrity at 40%. Structural strain indicators in the red. We can't take much more. Commander Rostova, strapped tightly into her command chair, didn't flinch. Her eyes, usually so calculating and cold, burned with a furious, almost desperate intensity. She was no longer just following orders. She was forging them in the fires of impossible odds. Helm, maintain trajectory engineer. Push the engines. I need every micronewton of thrust. We are not slowing down. Her focus was absolute, fixed on the holographic target that shimmered at the end of their impossible path, the Swarm Queen, a monstrous vessel that dwarfed even the Vigilance. Its biometallic carapace pulsing with a sickly green light as it directed its fleet and prepared its own devastating attack. She could feel the psychic pressure from below. Eris Thorn's agonized will holding the corridor open, a bridge of pure thought sustained by a mind stretched beyond human limits. His suffering was a palpable thing, a distant, burning agony that urged her forward. Then, the shield around the psychic corridor flickered. A colossal swarm battleship, one of the synaptic nodes, slammed against it. Not with a chaotic attack, but with a deliberate, suicidal ramming maneuver. The shield buckled, distorting reality itself, and a wave of raw energy surged into the Vigilance. Lights blew out. Secondary systems failed, and the ship lurched violently. Shield integrity at 10%, Kenji screamed, sparks showering from his console. The corridor is collapsing. We're exposed outside. The swarm ships were already pivoting, focusing their particle beams on the now vulnerable human vessel. It was over. They were caught. But in that exact moment, the psychic corridor vanished, not collapsing, but retracting. The Keto, draining its last reserves of Eris Thorn's agonizing life force, had pulled its power back, not to save itself, but to weaponize its last act. The Vigilance was flung out of the tunnel, a stone from a sling, directly into the face of the Swarm Queen. They were point blank, so close that the biometallic plating of the enemy vessel filled the main viewport, grotesque and alien. Commander, we're too close to fire. Our weapons! They need to spool up impact in 5 seconds, Kenji yelled, his voice cracking. Rostova knew, but the Keto had shown her one last, desperate trick. It was a gamble Eris Thorn would have approved of. All power to the magnetic accelerator cannon, she roared. No time to spool overload the capacitor's fire on my mark. Manual override. The ship shuddered violently as the capacitors, designed for a carefully timed, focused shot, were forced to dump their entire energy load at once. The forward section of the Vigilance glowed white-hot, humming with a power that threatened to tear the ship apart. Fire. Rostova screamed. There was no projectile. Instead, a wave of raw, unfocused electromagnetic energy. A pure surge of destructive force erupted from the Vigilance's bow, washing over the Swarm Queen. It wasn't a precision strike. It was a sledgehammer. The Queen's ship didn't explode. Instead, Its intricate biometallic structure went silent. The green light pulsing across its carapace died. The swarm, which had been in the act of firing, froze. The larger vessels stopped their attack, their particle beams flickering out. The smaller drones drifted aimlessly. The hive mind was severed. The queen was dead. A sudden, jarring quiet fell over the battlefield. The only sound was the protesting groan of the Vigilance's damaged hull and the ragged breathing of its crew. Rostova slumped in her chair, the adrenaline draining from her, leaving her utterly, completely spent. "Status report," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Kenji, staring at his tactical display with wide, disbelieving eyes, slowly nodded. "The swarm, they're dormant. Commander, no energy signatures, no movement. They're dead in the water. All of them." A wave of relief, so profound it bordered on pain, washed over the bridge, but it was short-lived. "Commander," Kenji added, his voice tinged with dread, "Triton's folly is dark. No life signs, no power signature. Dr. Thorne, he's gone." The news hit Rostova like a physical blow. Eris Thorne, the disgraced scientist, the zealot, the man whose unshakable conviction had saved them all. He had been the conduit, the bridge between humanity and the ancient power. He had burned himself out to protect them. A profound sense of loss settled over Rostova, mingled with a bitter irony. He had been right from the very beginning. She had dismissed him, mocked him, almost killed him, and in the end, he had given everything. "Send a retrieval team," she ordered, her voice flat. "Cure Triton's folly, and give him a full SDC honor guard." It was the least she could do for the man who had proven her wrong in the most spectacular and selfless way possible. And in the days that followed, the solar system was a hive of frantic activity, and the dormant swarm fleet, now lifeless husks, were slowly towed to a secure orbital graveyard for study. The Federation, alerted by the Vigilance's desperate, last-minute broadcast, arrived in force, their own ships dwarfing humanity's fleet. Commander Dvorak, his alien face etched with a complex mix of awe and suspicion, met with Rostova on the bridge of the Vigilance. "Commander Rostova," Dvorak began, his voice resonating through the comm. "Your actions are unprecedented. You risked your vessel, your life, your species for an unknown entity." Rostova, though weary, met his gaze without flinching. "It saved us, Commander, and in turn, we saved it. It's called the Keto. It's a sentinel, the last of its kind, and it was sleeping in our system, hunted by an ancient enemy." She played the recordings from Eris Thorne's station, the psychic echoes, the historical visions he had channeled. Dvorak listened, his expression slowly shifting from skepticism to a deep, unsettling understanding. "The chittering horde," he whispered, a name spoken with ancient fear. "We believe them contained in the outer spiral arms. This changes everything. The Keto, it acted as a beacon. Your system was bait." Rostova nodded. "Yes, and Dr. Eris Thorne, a human scientist, used himself to save it, to save us. He saw the truth, even when I couldn't." Dvorak's luminous eyes narrowed. "Your species, Commander, has displayed a dangerous capacity for both self-destruction and incredible sacrifice. The Federation will establish a permanent presence here, not to contain a threat, but to study the Keto, to understand its purpose, to learn from this anomaly." Rostova felt the weight of it all. Humanity was no longer just an upstart species, quarantined in a backwater system. They were on the galactic map, pulled into an ancient war by a sleeping god and a selfless martyr, and the solar system was safe, for now. But the peace was fragile. The chittering horde might be defeated, but the universe was vast, and there were other threats, other mysteries. She looked out at the cold, quiet expanse of Titan, still glowing faintly from the energy the Keto had absorbed. Somewhere beneath that methane sea, the ancient sentinel was healing, regenerating, his power slowly returning. It was an entity beyond comprehension, a weapon, a refugee, a guardian, and humanity, led by a dead scientist and a battle-hardened commander, had just become its unexpected ally. The weeks that followed the battle were a time of uneasy peace, a collective breath held by an entire species. The solar system was no longer a private backyard. It was now a shared space, a guarded frontier, a permanent joint task force, comprised of human SDC ships and the elegant, crystalline vessels of the Federation, maintained a vigilant watch in orbit around Saturn. Titan, once a forgotten outpost, was now the most important location in human space, designated the Titan Anomaly Zone, and placed under a strict quarantine. Also, Commander Eva Rostova remained in command of the Vigilance, but her mission had fundamentally changed. She was no longer a patrol captain. She was a warden, a diplomat, and a guardian, all at once. The weight of Eris Thorn's sacrifice was a constant, silent presence on her bridge, a ghost in the machine that had reshaped her entire world. She found herself poring over his old files, the ones she had once dismissed with such arrogant certainty. His reckless theoretical leaps now read like prophecy. His unsubstantiated conviction was a testament to a form of courage. She was only just beginning to understand the courage to believe in the impossible. 1 month after the battle, she took a shuttle down to Triton's Folly. The retrieval team had restored its basic systems, but the station was now considered sacred ground. The main control room, where Eris had made his final stand, had been preserved exactly as they found it, panels ripped open, conduits fused into abstract sculptures of melted metal, and a faint, lingering scent of ozone in the recycled air. A simple bronze plaque had been placed on the wall. Dr. Eris Thorn. He saw the truth in the deep. Rostova stood before it, her reflection a pale, solemn ghost on the polished surface. She had come to pay her respects, but she was also searching for something she couldn't define, an answer to a question she didn't know how to ask. As she stood in the silence, a soft chime emanated from the main science console, the very one Eris had used to communicate with the Keto. A junior science officer accompanying her, a specialist sent by the Federation, rushed to the screen. "Commander," the officer said, her voice a hushed whisper of awe. "There's a signal, a low-frequency psychic resonance. It's coming from the station's core systems, but it's being amplified by the Keto itself. It's like the station is dreaming." Rostova moved to the console. The screen displayed a cascade of data, a complex waveform that was neither audio nor radio. It was a pattern of pure thought. The officer initiated a translation matrix, a piece of advanced Federation technology designed to interpret nonverbal intelligence. Slowly, haltingly, words began to form on the screen. The sacrifice left an echo. Rostova stared at the words, her breath catching in her throat. It was the Keto, speaking not through a living conduit, but through the psychic imprint Eris Thorn had burned into the very fabric of the station. His mind, fused with the Keto's in his final moments, had created a permanent bridge, a new language. He is a part of us now, a memory, a voice, a profound, aching grief washed over Rostova, but it was mingled with a strange sense of peace. Eris wasn't entirely gone. He had become a part of something eternal. She placed her hand on the console, a silent gesture of gratitude and apology. "We hear you," she whispered. "What do you need?" The words on the screen shifted, the message growing clearer, more urgent. "The hive you fought was a finger. The hand is now clenching. The queen's death scream was a beacon, a rage call to its siblings. A greater darkness is stirring in the void. They will come, not to hunt, but to exterminate." The message was a shard of ice in the heart of their newfound security. This wasn't over. This was just the prelude. The Keto's next words solidified the terrifying new reality. "We were not built only to fight. We were built to preserve seeds of life, shielded from the hunger of the void. This system was chosen not for its isolation, but for its potential. For you." Rostova finally understood. The Keto wasn't just a weapon or a refugee. It was an ark, a celestial gardener that had chosen the Sol system as a place to cultivate new life, to protect it from the all-consuming plague of the chittering horde. Humanity wasn't an accident. They were a purpose. Armed with this terrifying, world-altering revelation, Rostova returned to the Vigilance. She immediately requested a high-level conference with Commander Dvorak and the SDC Admiralty. In the holographic briefing room, she stood before them, the same way Eris had once stood before her, a lone voice speaking an impossible truth. She relayed the Keto's message, her voice steady, imbued with a conviction she had inherited from the man she once scorned. She was no longer just presenting data, she was making a leap of faith. When she finished, a heavy silence filled the room. The human admiral shifted uncomfortably, their faces etched with doubt. But Dvorak, the ancient, wise alien, simply nodded slowly. "His echo speaks the truth," Dvorak said, his luminous eyes fixed on Rostova. "The Federation has long held fragmented records of the Sentinels and their purpose. We believe them to be a myth, a legend from a forgotten cosmic war. It seems the legend is alive, and it has chosen you." He turned his gaze to the human leadership. "Your species stands at a crossroads. You can view this as a curse, or you can accept it as your designation. The Federation will stand with you. The Keto is your charge, but its fight is now our fight." The decision was made. Humanity, the young, volatile species from a small blue world, was formally inducted into a galactic war that had been raging since before their son was born. Their role was clear. They were the guardians of the Sentinel. Rostova was placed in permanent command of the newly formed Titan Defense Fleet, a joint force of human and Federation ships. Her first order was to begin construction of a series of orbital defense platforms around Saturn, designed not with human technology, but with schematics provided by the faint, dreaming echo of Eris Thorn, channeled through the Keto's mind. The silence of space was broken, not by the sounds of war, but by the hum of creation, of preparation. Rostova stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at the magnificent rings of Saturn, no longer a symbol of cold, empty space, but the wall of a new garden, a fortress against the coming night. She felt a faint psychic touch, a feeling of shared purpose, of a partnership forged in fire and sacrifice. The universe was infinitely larger and more terrifying than her rulebook had ever conceived, but for the first time, she felt humanity was no longer alone within it. The Zealot's Phantom and the Abyssal God were at their back, and Eva Rostova, the commander who had learned to believe, would lead them into the dawn of a new and very dangerous age.